I'll never forget the moment my parents looked me in the eye and told me they wanted to sell my country house. Not just any house, my grandparents' house, the place where I spent every summer of my childhood, where I learned how to ride a bike, where the smell of apple pie seemed to live in the walls. To me, that house wasn't just bricks and wood. It was safety. It was history. It was love. But to my parents, it was nothing more than money, a bargaining chip for what they thought was more important: my younger sister's future. My mom said it so casually, like she was asking me to pass the salt at dinner. She leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and said, "Emily, we've been thinking. Lily needs an apartment. She's just starting her life in the city, and she needs stability. That country house, it's wasted on you. She needs it more." I remember staring at her, not even sure I heard her right. My mom, Margaret Carter, is a woman who always gets her way. She's practical, sometimes cold, and has never hidden the fact that my sister Lily is her favorite. To her, sacrifice isn't something she asks for. It's something she demands. My dad, Robert Carter, sat across the table. He's a man with a hard stare and a voice that can silence a room. When he added, "Your mother's right. Family means sacrifice. Lily's future comes first." I felt the words hit me like a punch. My dad believes loyalty means obedience, and obedience has always meant doing what they think is best. And then there's Lily, my little sister, 4 years younger than me. Lily Carter has always been the golden child, pretty, spoiled, and used to getting what she wants without lifting a finger. She sat next to Mom that night, grinning like she'd already picked out the curtains for her new apartment. She didn't even try to hide it. She didn't care how much that house meant to me. I sat there in silence, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth. My mind raced with every memory that house held: running barefoot through the grass, Grandpa teaching me how to fish in the pond, Grandma humming while she quilted by the window. That house wasn't just mine. It was theirs. It was their gift to me, the one thing they left behind. But as my mom's words echoed in the air, "She needs it more," I realized I had no voice in that room. I could feel my chest tightening, like all the air had been sucked out. Part of me wanted to slam my fists on the table to scream that I deserved to keep it, that Lily didn't need another handout. But another part of me, the part that had been conditioned my entire life to stay quiet, just stared down at my plate. "I didn't argue," I whispered to myself that night as I lay awake in bed. My whole body trembled, not from fear, but from anger I couldn't let out. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. They'd never listen. They never did. To them, I was the reliable one, the one who always gave up what I wanted, so Lily could shine brighter. But here's what they didn't know. I might have stayed silent at that dinner table, but inside, something in me shifted. My silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Because when I finally sold the house, I didn't sell it to strangers. I didn't hand it over to some realtor's client. Number. I sold it to someone they would never expect, someone whose very presence in that house would stop my father in his tracks, someone who would make my parents question every decision they had ever made. And the night Dad broke into that country house, furious and convinced he could take back what he thought belonged to him, he froze the second he saw who was standing inside. That was the moment everything changed. The country house wasn't just a house to me. It was home in the truest sense of the word. Nestled at the end of a gravel road surrounded by tall oak trees that whispered in the wind, it had been in my family for generations. My grandparents poured their love into every corner. You could feel it in the worn wooden floors, the faded wallpaper with tiny blue flowers, the rocking chair that creaked like it was sighing with memory. When I was a little girl, summers there felt like magic. Grandpa would take me out to the pond where we'd spend hours fishing, even if we rarely caught anything. He'd always say, "Emily, it's not about the fish, it's about the waiting." I never understood what he meant until I got older. Grandma would bake pies that filled the house with warmth, her laughter drifting through the open windows. She'd hum old songs as she worked, and I'd curl up by her side, watching her stitch quilts that seemed to carry stories in every pattern. After they passed, they left the house to me, not to my parents, not to Lily, to me. Because they knew what it meant to me. They knew I loved it not for what it was worth in dollars, but for what it meant in memories. It was the one place where I felt like I belonged, where I wasn't just the older daughter who had to be responsible, or the one always expected to give in. It was the only place that felt truly mine. My day-to-day life couldn't have been more different from the quiet of that house. I worked long shifts as a nurse at the county hospital, juggling patients, paperwork, and exhaustion. The work was hard, sometimes overwhelming, but when I drove out to the country house on my days off, it felt like I could breathe again. I'd sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the fields, and for a few hours, the weight of everything else just lifted off my shoulders. That's what made it so hard to understand my parents. My mom, Margaret Carter, is sharp and commanding, the kind of woman who doesn't ask, she tells. She grew up poor, always fighting for survival, and she's carried that mindset into every part of her life. To her, security isn't love or memories or peace. It's money. It's stability. She has always believed that whatever benefits Lily the most is worth any cost. My dad, Robert, is the kind of man who believes family means obedience. He grew up believing sons and daughters owed everything to their parents. Respect wasn't earned, it was demanded. He worked hard his whole life, and I think he expected his children to bend to his will as a kind of repayment. To him, my silence at family dinners was loyalty. My agreement with his decisions was proof that I was a good daughter. And then there was Lily, my sister, 4 years younger, beautiful, ambitious, but spoiled. Lily was always the golden child. If she wanted something, my parents would bend over backward to make it happen. I don't even blame her entirely. It wasn't her fault she was favored. But growing up, it was always me who was expected to step aside. If Lily wanted the bigger bedroom, I moved. If Lily wanted the new dress, I wore hand-me-downs. And now, as an adult, nothing had changed. She needed an apartment, so of course the solution was to sell what mattered to me. At that family dinner, when my parents first brought it up, the air in the room was thick. Mom's voice was cold but firm. "Emily," she said, "this isn't about you. Lily's starting her life in the city. She needs stability. That house, it's wasted on you." I clenched my hands under the table, trying to keep my face neutral. "Wasted on me," I repeated in my head. Did she think my life didn't matter? Did she think the hours I poured into taking care of others as a nurse meant nothing? Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother's right. We'll sell it. Lily will finally have her place." His tone wasn't a suggestion. It was a decision. Lily's eyes sparkled. She didn't say thank you. She didn't apologize for what I'd lose. She just smiled, already picturing herself decorating her new apartment. I sat there quietly, swallowing everything I wanted to say. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I knew from experience it would do no good. Every time I'd tried to stand up for myself in the past, my parents had dismissed me as ungrateful or selfish. So I stayed silent. I ate my food. I let them think I agreed. But deep down, I knew something was breaking. This wasn't just about a house. It was about being erased, about never being seen. It was about losing the one thing that tied me to the only people who had ever truly loved me, my grandparents. That night, as I drove back to the house, the gravel crunching under my tires, I sat on the porch in the dark. I stared at the old oak trees swaying gently in the breeze, and I made myself a quiet promise. If they wanted the house, they would get a surprise they'd never see coming. The days after that dinner felt heavier than usual. I carried the weight of their words around with me, like an invisible stone pressing on my chest. At work, I tried to focus on my patients, but even in the middle of checking vitals or walking, down the sterile hospital corridors, my mind kept replaying the same sentence. That house is wasted on you. I couldn't shake the feeling that my life, everything I had built for myself, meant nothing to them. I wasn't the daughter who needed support, so I wasn't the daughter who mattered. One evening, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She stood in the doorway, her posture sharp, her eyes fixed on me with that familiar mixture of expectation and disappointment. "Emily," she said, "we need to move quickly. The market's strong. If we sell the house now, we can put a down payment on Lily's apartment before prices rise." Her tone was clipped, businesslike, as if this was already settled. "Mom," I said quietly, "that house is all I have left of Grandma and Grandpa. Don't you think that matters?" She didn't flinch. "Memories don't pay bills." Lily needs this. You'll understand one day. Understand. That word stung. What she really meant was, your feelings don't matter. A week later, Dad called me. His voice was firm, like steel wrapped in gravel. Emily, your mother's right. Stop dragging this out. You're being selfish. That house should help the family. And right now, the family means Lily. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. So I'm not family? I asked. Dad let out a long sigh, the kind of sigh that dripped with disappointment. Don't twist my words. We've done everything for you. Now it's your turn to give back. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I hung up, my hands trembling. Every conversation left me feeling smaller, like I was being erased piece by piece. Lily didn't help. She called me one night, her voice sweet but laced with entitlement. Em, I know this is hard for you, but it's not like you even live there full time. You're always at the hospital. You don't need the house like I need an apartment. This is just how things are supposed to work out. I bit my tongue so hard it almost bled. Her words cut deeper because she didn't even see it as a sacrifice. To her, it was just natural. Lily needed, Emily gave. I started losing sleep. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, feeling this burning mix of anger and helplessness. My friends noticed. One night, sitting across from my best friend Marissa in a quiet diner, I broke down. They want me to give up the house, I whispered, my voice cracking. They want me to erase everything my grandparents gave me, everything that feels like mine, just so Lily can have another gift. And if I say no, I'm selfish. If I stay silent, they win. What am I supposed to do? Marissa leaned forward, her eyes fierce. Em, listen to me. If you give in now, you'll be giving in for the rest of your life. They'll never stop taking. You have to stand up for yourself, or they'll walk all over you until there's nothing left. Her words rattled inside me, planting a seed I didn't want to admit, was already growing. Still, every time I saw my parents, they pressed harder. Mom would say things like, "Don't drag this out, Emily. Think about your sister's future." Dad would mutter, "A good daughter puts family first." Lily sent me apartment listings with excited notes, as if I'd already agreed. I started avoiding their calls, letting the phone buzz on the table while I stared at the country house's deed in my hands. My grandparents' signatures were on the original documents. Their names in ink, proof that they wanted me to have this place. And yet I felt like I was drowning under their expectations. Each day that passed, the pressure mounted. The house felt less like a sanctuary and more like a battlefield waiting for the first shot. One night, I drove out there alone. The air was cool, the stars sharp against the dark sky. I sat on the porch steps, the wood creaking under me, and whispered to the night, "What would you want me to do, Grandma? Grandpa, would you want me to fight for this or let it go?" The silence around me felt like an answer. My grandparents had trusted me with this house for a reason. And for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not fear, but resolve. If they wanted me to sell, fine. But the choice of who I sold it to, that would be mine. Once I made the decision that I wouldn't let my parents win on their terms, I felt a strange kind of calm settle over me. For weeks, I'd been suffocating under their pressure, but now I had a plan. Even if they didn't know it yet. If I had to sell the house, I would. But not to fund Lily's shiny new apartment. Not to erase my grandparents' legacy. No, the house would go to someone who understood what it meant. Someone who could protect it in a way my parents never cared to. The idea came to me late one night as I flipped through old photo albums in the attic. I stopped at a picture of my uncle, my mom's younger brother, standing with a boy about my age. The boy was grinning, his arms slung around my shoulders. Daniel Harper, my cousin. Memories came rushing back. Long summer days when Daniel stayed at the house, the two of us running through the fields, climbing trees, chasing fireflies. He'd been like the big brother I never had. He protected me from the older kids, shared his secrets, and made me feel like I wasn't invisible. But everything changed when he was a teenager. After my aunt died, Daniel needed support, but my parents wanted nothing to do with him. They called him trouble. He drifted, made mistakes, and they cut him off completely. For years, I hadn't seen him. He became the family's ghost, the one no one talked about. But looking at that photograph, I felt a spark. Daniel had been cast out, just like I was being pushed aside now. Maybe he would understand. Maybe he would see the house not as money, but as home. It took me days to track him down. I found his name in an old contact book, tried the number, and was stunned when he picked up. His voice was deeper, rougher, but still familiar. "Daniel?" I asked, my heart racing. "It's Emily." Emily Carter. There was a pause, then a low laugh, tinged with disbelief. "Em, I haven't heard that name in years. What do you want with me?" I swallowed hard. "I need your help." Actually, I think we need each other. We met a week later at a quiet coffee shop in town. When I saw him, I almost didn't recognize him. He was broader, tougher looking, with tired eyes that had seen too much. But when he smiled, it was the same boy I remembered from the summers at the house. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair, "why now? Why after all this time?" I told him everything about my parents, about Lily, about how they wanted me to sell the house so she could have an apartment. My voice shook as I spoke, but Daniel listened quietly, his jaw tightening. When I finished, I whispered, "I can't let them win. I can't let them erase the last thing I have of my grandparents. But if I have to sell, I want to sell it to someone who will understand, someone who will take care of it, someone—" They would never expect. Daniel raised his eyebrows. "Me?" "Yes," I said firmly. "You. The house should stay in the family, but not in their hands. In yours." He shook his head slowly. "Emily, if they see me in that house, they'll lose their minds. You know how they feel about me. They'll see it as betrayal." "They already think I'm selfish," I replied, my voice gaining strength. "They already see me as the problem. Maybe it's time I stop trying to prove I'm the good daughter and start doing what feels right. And Daniel, this feels right." For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he leaned forward, his eyes softer now. "Your grandparents loved that house. If you trust me with it, I'll honor that. But Emily, you realize this will change everything with your parents. There's no going back." I met his gaze, steady. "There's nothing left to go back to." The paperwork was discreet. I kept my parents in the dark, letting them believe I was following through with their plan. Every phone call from Mom, every message from Lily about apartments. I nodded along, gave short answers, and kept my secret close. For the first time in my life, I was the one holding the cards. I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't seeking permission. I was making a choice for myself. And yet, beneath that newfound strength, I felt the storm building. I knew my parents. I knew my father's temper, my mother's cold fury. When they discovered the truth, they would explode. But I also knew that when that moment came, I'd finally be ready to stand my ground. Because this time, it wouldn't just be me against them. It would be me and Daniel together. Strengthen's theme of betrayal versus chosen family, setting up the explosive climax. The day my parents found out the house was sold, my phone rang 15 times in 2 hours. Mom, Dad, Lily. They all called, one after the other, their voices filling my voicemail with rage and disbelief. "Emily, how could you do this?" Mom's voice cracked with fury. "You've ruined everything." Dad's tone was darker, colder. "You don't get to make decisions like this. That house belongs to this family. I'll settle this myself." The last message was from Lily, her voice shrill with panic. "I already told my friends I was moving. How could you take this from me?" I didn't respond. My stomach churned with nerves, but underneath there was something stronger. Resolve. For the first time, I wasn't scared of disappointing them. That evening, Daniel called me. "They'll come, you know," he said quietly. "Your dad won't let this go." "I know," I whispered, staring out the window at the darkening sky. "But I'm ready." I didn't have to wait long. 2 nights later, my parents drove out to the country house. I knew because Daniel texted me, "They're here." I rushed over, my headlights cutting through the night, my heart pounding like a drum. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I saw Dad's truck parked crookedly out front, the door left half open. The porch light glowed, but the house was silent. I sprinted up the steps, my chest tight, and pushed the door open. Inside, the air felt electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. Dad stood in the middle of the living room, fists clenched, his face pale as stone. Mom was beside him, one hand pressed over her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. And Lily lingered near the door, frozen, her eyes darting between all of us like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. And then there was Daniel. He stood tall in the center of the room, his posture steady, his expression calm but unyielding. The deed was on the coffee table, the ink fresh, the keys hanging loosely from his hand. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was louder than any words. Finally, Dad's voice cracked the air like a whip. "What the hell is this?" His eyes darted to me, blazing. "You sold it to him? After everything we told you?" Daniel's voice was low even, but it carried a weight that filled the room. "The house is mine now. Emily made her choice." Mom shook her head, her voice trembling. "This is betrayal. Pure betrayal. How could you, Emily? How could you do this to your sister?" The heat rose in my chest, and for once I didn't stay silent. My voice shook at first, but it grew stronger with every word. "No, Mom. What's betrayal is asking me to erase the only piece of my grandparents I had left. What's betrayal is acting like my life means nothing compared to Lily's. I kept quiet for years, but not anymore. This was my house to sell, and I chose someone who understands what it means." Dad took a step toward me, his jaw tight, his voice thunderous. "You've disgraced this family." But before I could answer, Daniel moved slightly forward, his presence like a shield. "No, Robert. You disgraced this family years ago when you abandoned me. When I needed you, you turned your back. You can hate me all you want, but this house isn't yours to claim. Emily gave it to me, and I'll protect it the way her grandparents would have wanted." The words hit like a hammer. Dad froze, his fists unclenching, his anger colliding with something deeper, guilt. For the first time in my life, I saw him speechless. Lily's voice cut through the silence, small and wavering. "I don't understand." "Why would you do this, Emily?" I needed that apartment. I turned to her, my throat tight, but I forced the words out. "Lily, I've given up everything for you my whole life. My room, my clothes, my time, my voice. But this was the one thing I wasn't willing to lose. You'll have to find your own way just like I did." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. Dad finally turned toward the door, his face hard, his voice low. "You're no daughter of mine." The words pierced, but they didn't break me. For once, I felt lighter. Mom followed him silently, her eyes cold, her arm pulling Lily out with them. The front door slammed shut, leaving the house in ringing silence. I exhaled, my body shaking, and Daniel placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Em." He finally stood up to them. I looked around the room, the same creaking floors, the same faded wallpaper, and for the first time in months I felt at peace. My parents might have walked out, but I had chosen something greater than their approval. I had chosen myself. The night my parents stormed out of the country house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled, I thought I would collapse from the weight of it all. My hands trembled, my chest heaved, and for a moment I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. But then I looked at Daniel, standing steady in the living room that smelled faintly of wood smoke and memory, and I realized something. This wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning. For days after, the silence from my parents was deafening. No calls, no texts, no knocks on my door. When I did hear from them, it was through Lily. Her messages were short, bitter, and raw. "You've ruined everything." "Mom won't stop crying. Dad says you're selfish." At first, every word cut like glass. I sat on my porch at night, the cool country air wrapping around me, replaying the confrontation over and over in my mind. Their anger replayed too, Dad's rage, Mom's shock, Lily's confusion. I thought about how easy it would have been to give in, to keep the peace by giving up the one thing that truly mattered to me. But as the nights passed, something strange happened. The ache began to fade, replaced by something I hadn't felt in years, relief. For the first time, I wasn't living for their approval. For the first time, I had stood my ground. Daniel and I spent that first week fixing small things around the house. The broken screen door, the loose steps on the porch. We laughed as we worked, memories of childhood slipping into our conversations. "Remember when Grandpa tried to teach us both how to use that old tractor?" he said, grinning. I laughed, the sound startling me with its ease. "And you nearly drove it into the pond." He shrugged. "Grandpa said I was the worst driver he'd ever seen." Guess some things don't change. It felt like the house was breathing again, not with tension or dread, but with life, with family. Not the kind who demanded sacrifice, but the kind who showed up, who stayed, who chose me. One afternoon, I found myself in my grandmother's old rocking chair, the one by the window where she used to quilt. The light spilled across the room, dust dancing in the beams, and I realized I wasn't haunted by the past anymore. I was part of something new. The house wasn't empty. It was alive again, filled with the echoes of my grandparents' love and the promise of a different kind of family bond. It hurt to know my parents had turned their backs on me. It hurt even more to hear my father say I wasn't his daughter anymore. But as painful as that was, I also knew something deep in my bones. Family isn't just blood. It's loyalty. It's love. And sometimes it's the people who were cast aside who become your real home. I thought about Marissa's words that night in the diner. "They'll never stop taking if you don't stand up." She was right. By saying no, I hadn't just saved the house, I'd saved myself. Lily never forgave me. Maybe one day she'll understand, but for now, she's chosen to believe the story my parents tell, that I was selfish, that I betrayed them, and maybe to them, I did. But to me, it was the first time I was honest with myself. The country house still stands, its white paint chipped in places, the porch creaking when the wind blows. But when I step inside, I don't just see the past anymore. I see possibility. I see a future I carved out for myself, one choice at a time. Sometimes, when the evenings are quiet, Daniel and I sit on the porch together, watching the fireflies rise from the grass. He'll sip his coffee, I'll sip my tea, and we'll fall into easy silence. The kind of silence that feels safe, the kind of silence that feels like family. And in those moments, I know I made the right choice. Because I may have lost my parents' approval, I may have lost my sister's affection, but I gained something far more important: my voice, my freedom, my peace. So when I tell this story, I don't tell it as a tale of loss. I tell it as a story of standing up, of breaking a cycle, of finding family in unexpected places. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes family isn't the people who raised you. Sometimes family is the ones who choose to stay when everyone else walks out. That's my story. Losing my parents' approval wasn't easy, and neither was letting go of the version of myself they wanted me to be. But standing up for myself, protecting what mattered, and reconnecting with the family who truly cared, that gave me something worth more than their approval ever could: peace. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to stand up to someone who tried to take away something important, I'd love to hear about it. Share your thoughts in the comments. I really do read them, and your stories mean more than you know. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It helps more people find these kinds of stories and join this community. And if you know someone who might relate, share it with them. It might be exactly the message they need to hear today. And of course, if you want more stories like this, real, emotional, and raw, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next one. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, for listening, and for being part of this journey. This isn't just my story. It's a reminder that all of us deserve to protect the things that matter most, no matter who tries to take them away. I'll see you in the next video.